Hello, welcome to my knife making video. Here I'm going to show you how I make a basic single bevel knife. I'll also show you how to harden and temper the blade too. We need to use a high carbon steel, and most people making their own knife would use 0.1 gram flat stock, which is ready for working. I'm going to use an old metalwork file, which will need softening first. Right, here we have our file. At the moment it's very hard and it needs softening. We need to anneal it. To do this we need to get it up to 800 degrees centigrade or red hot. So I've lit a fire, got a nice bed of embers down. We're going to put the file into the fire. We're going to stoke the fire back up again and get it roaring hot and keep it going for about half an hour. Then a very important thing to do is to allow it to cool down very slowly. This will allow all the carbide to turn back into carbon, and then the fire will be workable. There, lovely. Soon that'll be red hot. We'll leave it for a while. Job done. File's in there, red hot. We'll leave it there for about half an hour. We'll keep the fire going as much as we can, but we've pretty much got all the fuel on it that we need. So now it's just a matter of waiting. And of course, the best thing to do while you're waiting is have a cup of tea. Lovely. The fire's cold now, so let's have a look. We've got some good charcoal here left from the fire, so I've got a biscuit tin I'm going to collect up as much as I can, and we can use that for the forge. It's a good idea to put it in a tin. It has gone out, but just in case there's the slightest ember there, we'll put it in the tin, put the lid on. Any remaining embers should go out. Lovely, we'll leave that outside and be ready for when we need it. Now we've got the file out of the fire, it should be nice and soft, but we can do a couple of things just to check that. So if we put it in the vise, we can try filing it for a start, because that's one process that we're going to have to do to it. We can try it along the whole length of one edge just to see if it's soft. Now you should be able to see there that I've made an impression, but I can also feel that the metal's soft as well, so that's all a good indication that we've managed to anneal it. So we'll just spin it over. We need to thoroughly check it, so we need to check both edges. Yes, that seems okay. You can get spots when you do this in such a primitive way,
that are still a bit hard. And another little test that I'd like to do is just to try drilling it. I'm obviously not going to drill all the way through because I don't want holes all over it. I don't know whether you can see there, but there are iron filings coming off there, so we're managing to drill it. If that was hardened in its original state, it wouldn't have even made a mark on it. One last test, I'd just like to try hacksawing it. Yes, as you can see, the saw's gone in quite a way there, so I think we're going to be okay. Great. The next procedure is to clean up the file, to take all the teeth off and make it into what is basically ground flat stock. And from that point, obviously, the procedure is the same if you buy the ground flat stock or if you create your own out of an old file. The next step you can do with the file if you want to, but of course that's going to be a lot of hard work, so this little fella comes in. Now down here in the woods I don't have mains, so what I use is a 12 volt car battery, an inverter, and in my case, because my grinder is a 110 volt, I have to use a transformer. You may not have to use the transformer, which is the silver box on the right. That's the inverter. That turns 12 volt DC from the car battery into 240 volts AC. Right, here we go. There, we've got most of the teeth cleaned off. We've got a nice flat spine, so we can use that as the back of the blade and put the curve on there for the nose. There's still a few marks in there, you can still see the teeth, but I quite like that. I'm not too keen on a really polished surface, but if you wanted to get it smoother, then that's fine. And now's the time to get a bit more off, but later, when there's a little less surface area to clean, that will make it a bit easier. I'm going to use my old knife just to give me an idea of dimensions and to give me a rough shape. But then, as I'm grinding and filing the shape, I shall just sculpt it. Next, we'll just cut off any excess. And now back to the angle grinder to give our knife some shape. There, that's got the overall shape. Just need to clean it up a bit to make it safer to work with because there's a few burrs on it. And then the bevel that will form the actual blade, I will start with the angle grinder because there's a lot of metal to take off, and it will make it a lot easier than just filing it all. Now that's taken most of the metal off, save us quite a lot of time and effort with the file. This is a simple jig that I made to help file the blade at the right angle, that being approximately 22 degrees. As you can see, it's just a vise on a piece of plywood with a block of wood at the back at the same level as the top of the jaws of the vise. And then two little holders that I've made, just some 1/2 inch round bar and some 1/4 inch flat bar that hold the file and the knife blade in place. With this jig we can file the bevel flat and at the right angle. Now we're finished with the grinder, we just need to clean it up a bit with the file and get a bit more shape. When filing the blade, the line of the file in relation to the blade is quite important. When you file in the straight section, it's not too much of a problem to go at an arc. But when you get towards the nose, the angle can change with this jig if you don't keep the handle of the file holder right up against the right hand side so that it's still square onto the blade. That way this angle will change as you come along anyway, but at least it will minimise it by keeping the handle of the file over here. Because we're using a file which is quite narrow in that direction, there's a tendency to belly that way. So use the sliding bevel again just to check, see how flat it is, and any high spots, take those out. Bearing in mind that you need to take the same amount of metal off each side of the blade, once you've got halfway down on this side and it's nice and neat, obviously flip it over and do the same to the other side. It's very likely that you're going to have to swap between sides in order to get the job done right. Now, to get the angle back when you go back to a side you've already done, or at least started, get the whole thing in the jig. It's a bit of a juggling act. Just nip it up so you can still manipulate it, and feel between your thumb and finger holding the file down to the blade, and rock the knife blade back and forth until you can feel that the file is square onto the blade. Tighten up the vise, check it visually, see if there's any light visible from the other side, and then tighten it up, and a couple of gentle strokes, and look to see where the scratch marks are to make sure that they're not either towards the cutting edge or towards the back edge. and if you've got it right, carry on. If not, just keep tweaking it backwards and forwards until you get it right. That's the filing done. The next thing to do is to drill 3 holes for the rivets that will hold the handle on. We'll drill them now before we harden and temper the blade, just in case the process hardens where the first rivet will go. Before I harden and temper the blade, I want to hone it on the oil stone to get it as sharp as I possibly can. I'm going to use a carborundum stone, a double-sided one, obviously start on the coarse side and then finish off on the fine, getting rid of all the scratches left by the file. Now, one of the great things about this style of knife, with it having such a large surface area on the bevel, it allows you to balance it nice and easily on the stone and keep it flat. This helps you get a really sharp edge on the blade.